It's the battle of Captain Marvel versus Captain Marvel. It's DC Fawcett's Captain Marvel, who end up in legal battles, giving Marvel a chance to grab the name, forcing this Captain Marvel to be Shazam, against Marvel's 7th and most popular Captain Marvel. Who did it best? Captain Marvel stars Brie Larson as Carol Danvers. She is a Kree warrior who is actually a Terran pilot who has been lied to for the past 6 years. She comes off with a very limited emotional range, which, despite what the internet says, Larson does as much with as she can.
Want to fight? Your brother?
No.
Father?
No.
Your old commander?
Viz.
It's me you see, isn't it? That's a photon blast.
And?
A scroll can't do that.
It is clearly intended for her to be reserved, while also being told that she is letting her emotions get the better of her.
Control your impulses. Stop using this, start using this.
It's an idea that will be discussed later. This reserved emotional range is a disservice to the story that they are trying to tell, and to Larson's acting abilities. It would actually mean more to have Carol or Veers act more normally, and be told she lets her emotions get the better of her despite the fact that her emotions are normal.
I want to serve.
Then master yourself. What was given can be taken away.
It makes Larson come off largely more wooden than she should be. Shazam has Asher Angel as Billy Batson and Zachary Levi as Shazam. Batson is portrayed as a rebel only interested in finding his mother and willing to do most anything to that end. He is willing to steal from cops and even his disabled roommate. His arc is him finding his family not through tracking down blood relations, but through accepting the people who want to be his family. Billy has a lot to learn very quickly, especially when he comes face to face with a real serious threat. All his rebellious acts before just led to foster families, cops, and anyone else getting involved, giving him slaps on the wrist and placing him in his next or current home. When he becomes Shazam, he has to face Savannah, who has no issues killing him or his family. Asher Angel does a great job playing the disillusioned kid, while Zachary Levi is great as the kid in the adult's body, trying to make sense of the world.
Listen, I have serious responsibilities now, okay? But that's cool, because I can carry that burden with my hands, line it with my hands.
The point is for Shazam, because both Asher and Levi are allowed to convey the proper emotional ranges for their characters. Because Larson is limited, DC gets the point.
I'm not even looking! No! Oh,
Why?
And done! Finished him!
Shazam has a screenplay by Henry Gayden and a story by Henry Gayden and Darren Lemke, and hits two themes very hard. The very idea that a kid can suddenly turn into adult is very reminiscent of Big, and introduces the idea of needing to grow up very quickly. Perhaps the only other theme it hits harder is the idea that family is not the people who are your blood, it's the people who are there for you. Much of the story is largely dedicated to pushing this theme. The villain has a super generic origin. He's evil because his family was abusive.
You did this. You did this!
But is also used to reinforce the theme. Not only does the threat he present force Billy to grow up, but also the fact that he lacks any real family that cares for him. They both technically have families, but their blood family treats them horribly. It's Billy's foster family that is the outlier, making Savannah also serve as a dark reflection for what Billy could be without the people who care for him. There is also the idea of being truly worthy, and the idea that true worth isn't rewarded, but earned.
But you will never be worthy. You seek a pure soul, old man, but no one's worthy.
Looking at Billy's actions throughout the movie, I wouldn't call him evil, but he's certainly not deserving of the powers of one of the most powerful superheroes in the world. If the wizard didn't get desperate, he surely would have rejected Billy as the avatar for Shazam. But over time, Billy learns to use his powers responsibly. He wasn't worthy when he got the powers, but proved himself worthy in the end through his actions. Sivana was deemed unworthy through his actions, and throughout the movie continues to prove that he's truly not worthy. Captain Marvel, on the other hand, is all about gaslighting. It's a screenplay by Anna Bodden, Ryan Fleck, and Genevieve Robertson-Dworet, and a story by Nicole Perlman, Meg LaFleur, Anna Bodden, Ryan Fleck, and Genevieve Robertson-Dworet. Quite frankly, it is a feature of this movie that I hadn't really thought about until it was brought up in the comments for Captain Marvel vs. Wonder Woman. The story is about Carol Danvers, a Kree warrior who has been given superpowers by the Kree Empire, but they require she learn to control her powers. She was found 6 years earlier by Jan Rog and adopted into his group. They constantly note that she lets her emotions take control of her despite the fact she doesn't seem particularly emotional at all. She is told she has to contain her power to truly unleash it. She is also told that the evil shape-shifting Skrulls, who are a threat to the Kree Empire, must be destroyed. Eventually, Carol ends up on C-53. This is actually Earth mid-1990s. She learns that she is from Earth and was an Air Force pilot. Jan Rog attacked her and killed her mentor, Mar-Vell. He is after the light speed engine Mar-Vell created. Carol destroys it to stop him from getting it, but in the explosion, she gains her powers and possibly loses her memory. It's not clear if that's a factor in her memory loss, or if it's something the Kree did to her, though the Kree probably wanted info she may have on the engine, so it was probably the explosion. So to go back to gaslighting, let's look at the textbook definition. Gaslighting is a form of emotional abuse that is seen in abusive relationships. It is the act of manipulating a person by forcing them to question their thoughts, memories, and even the events occurring around them. A victim of gaslighting can be pushed so far that they question their own sanity. She is undergoing textbook gaslighting in this movie. Jan Rog is probably the worst perpetrator of this. He speaks fondly of her and encourages her in what seems like positive ways.
I want you to be the best version of yourself.
I think a strong argument can be made that he's gaslighting himself with his affection for her, that he actually thinks he is helping her. Gaslighting seems like a relevant issue to talk about now in particular because we are all victims of it at various points in our lives. We convince ourselves that someone has our best interest at heart because surely they would never mean ill. We choose to believe them despite the facts at our disposal because they mean us well. It gets worse because the person gaslighting you has likely convinced themselves that they mean well and that the lies they continue with are for your own good. It becomes a self-perpetuating loop until the victim of the gaslighting breaks the cycle. The person lying can help by revealing that they were lying, but if the victim is unwilling to accept that reveal, they can continue gaslighting themselves with the original words of the liar instead of the truth. It's an evil cycle. The gaslighting can only be truly broken by the victim, though. So, with this movie having such a strong and relevant theme behind it, why does it come off as very surface level and generic? Because there is also the sexism angle to this movie.
You're lighting up, honey, huh? Got a smile for me?
And that, too, is a very relevant issue. But because much of the story is dedicated to gaslighting, it forces the sexism to a very surface level. When we first get flashbacks to Earth, it is loaded with memories of men telling Carol that she's not good enough and that she shouldn't be doing things intended to be done by men.
Listen, are we in the right?
What the hell are you thinking? You don't belong out here!
I think we went back too far.
You let him drive.
They'll never let you fly.
You're a decent pilot,
but you're too emotional.
You do know why they call it a cockpit, don't you?
It presents a much more surface level movie than it should. And here's where the movie fails. There is societal gaslighting too, that is very ingrained in our culture. Most obvious examples being sexism and racism, the idea that people are less or greater than because of the color of their skin or the parts between their legs. The movie could have included these ideas into the gaslighting theme, but because they appear like different aspects of the movie, it makes the surface level ideas become dominant and override the much more interesting themes of gaslighting and make a movie far simpler than it should have been. It's because Captain Marvel muddles a very strong story, which isn't surprising. Look at the huge writing credits. That gives Shazam the point here. Honestly, Captain Marvel tries for something great and just ends up good. Shazam is exactly what it should be. Point for DC.
Thank you for this food. Thank you for this day. Thank you for this family.
Getting right back into Captain Marvel, we find the question of who is the villain here becoming irrelevant. Is it Jan Rog? Is it the Supreme Intelligence? Is it the very concept of gaslighting? An argument can be made for all to varying degrees. When the movie's story is based largely around gaslighting, the villain will become nebulous because gaslighting is more a bubble situation where everyone within a bubble is gaslighting. That means the main avatar for it would have to be the Supreme Intelligence, as played by Annette Bening. But it also means there's less a focus on those villains, since even though Jan Rog is gaslighting Carol, he is also most likely gaslighting himself, making him a perpetrator and a victim. The Supreme Intelligence doesn't have much of a role other than being the super powerful leader of the Kree Empire who does mean stuff and lies. In Shazam, we have Mark Strong as Dr. Sivana. He was unappreciated to an abusive level by his father and brother. Then, when he had the opportunity to get the powers of Shazam, he was once again rejected. He is on a path to not only get the powers of the Sins, but the powers of Shazam as well. I'll be blunt, he's not a very deep villain, but he is effective. Director David F. Sandberg gets to show off his skills in horror with the boardroom scene where Sivana brutally murders executives as Dad's company. It is very dark for a movie largely designed for kids, which is why it's so great. The large theme of this movie is growing up. Billy Batson is given incredible superpowers and has to learn to use them responsibly. He starts out largely doing what a teenager would do if granted superpowers and the ability to look like an adult. Do light shows to Survivor, buy beer, and go to strip clubs.
Come on now. Hands. Lightning with my hands. Lightning with my hands. Lightning with my hands.
It's all fun and games to him until Sivana goes after him. He forces Billy to grow up very quickly if he wants to save his family. Sivana himself is a fairly basic villain, improved by a performance by the always excellent Mark Strong. Almost by the very nature of the story of Captain Marvel, means the main villain of that movie would likely be weaker. It allows for an easy point for DC.
When I was a child, the old man told me I wasn't good enough. Yet here you are, a coward.
Shazam has Jack Dylan Grazer as Freddy, Djimon Houston as the Wizard, Faithe Herman as Darla, Grace Fulton as Mary, Marita Milans as Rosa, Patrick Swayze as Dalton, and Cooper Andrews as Victor. I know there are many more characters to talk about, but these are the ones that have a serious impact on the story. Freddy is the friend that helps Billy throughout his superhero stuff. Darla is the friend that helps Billy with his family stuff. The Wizard is the one who takes a chance on Billy and gives him his powers. Mary shows how a supportive family can be the key for evolving. Rosa and Victor are the family that Billy should embrace. And last but not least, Dalton shows how a world-famous bouncer can overcome a J.C. Penney franchise owner.
You know, when I came to this town after Korea, there was nothing. I brought the ball here. I got the 7-Eleven. I got the photomat here. Christ, J.C. Penney is coming here because of me.
Whoop-de shit.
All of these characters help Billy evolve and represent different aspects that Billy needs to improve upon. Captain Marvel has Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, Jude Law as Jan Rog, Ben Mendelsohn as Talos, Patrick Swayze as Dalton, and Lashana Lynch as Monica Rambeau. Jan Rog represents the forces trying to suppress Captain Marvel, and it's only when she breaks away from him and starts to be influenced by other characters does she realize what's happening to her. It's Dalton that gives her most valuable lesson of all.
All you have to do is follow 3 simple rules. 1, never underestimate your opponent. Expect the unexpected. 2, take it outside. Never start anything inside the bar unless it's absolutely necessary. And 3, be nice.
Overall, these are strong characters in their own right, with their own stories and motivations behind them. This is easily the close category so far, but it has to go to Captain Marvel. Shazam has great supporting characters, but also has so many they become redundant in many aspects. Captain Marvel's supporting cast stands out as a real strength for the movie. Point for Marvel.
Can you turn into a cat?
What's a cat?
What about a filing cabinet?
Why would I turn into a filing cabinet?
The Venus flytrap. I'll give you $50 right now if you turn into a Venus flytrap.
The music for Captain Marvel is by Pinar Toprak. For the most part, it's fairly standard and forgettable.
Come here. Come here, bro.
But it does have very Blade Runner influences in moments. The music for Shazam is by Benjamin Wallfish. It's not bad as much as unremarkable and standard. It works for the moment, but I couldn't tell you anything about it afterwards. Both movies have licensed music. Shazam has a pointless Bruno Mars cameo for no reason. While Captain Marvel features a so on-the-nose it's cringy appearance of No Doubt. There's also a weird bit where the Supreme Intelligence is playing Nirvana.
Oh. Music. It's a nice touch.
Which actually makes no sense in the story, as Carol left Earth in the 80s and would only have a chance to listen to Nirvana after her return, and it's doubtful it would have made that big of an impact. Both movies utilize sound design effectively, but nothing stands out incredibly well. Shazam gets the edge in licensed music. The question is it enough to rule out Captain Marvel's edge in the score? The answer is no. It's close again, but Captain Marvel has a slight edge. Point for Marvel. This one is again a contest between two features that aren't particularly stand out. Neither Captain Marvel or Shazam have inspired visuals of note. Shazam has more interesting lighting, as Captain Marvel falls victim to the same lighting of the majority of the MCU, where everything is just equally well lit. But the vast majority of Shazam also falls into this camp. I brought up how Shazam has more contrast when I compared it to Homecoming, and the same is also true when it's compared to Captain Marvel. This is sadly not a very interesting category for either of these otherwise good movies, but Shazam is slightly more interesting in the visual front. Point for DC. This category seems to be falling into the same camp as story themes often. Not always if the genres are different enough, but when two movies have very similar genres, it means this point will almost always go to the story theme's winner. While Captain Marvel had a much loftier goal it was shooting for, it didn't quite reach the heights that it should have. Meanwhile, Shazam was exactly the movie it wanted to be. No twist here. It's now a point for DC.
You're like a mile away from me right now. There's cars and trucks.
I will have the world eating out of the palm of my hand.
All I see is mouth moving. I don't hear it.
I found I liked Captain Marvel much more with this recent viewing than any before. I really saw what it was going for and saw how good this movie really could have been. Captain Marvel is a movie of unbelievable potential that only reached most of it. Shazam is a movie of much less potential and much more limited goals, but reaches all the goals incredibly easily.
They think order and chaos are somehow opposites and try to control what won't be.
I used to fuck guys like you in prison.